Hi everyone, my name is Eric and I'm the developer of an upcoming action platforming game called GB Rober, which is a game about shooting your bosses and fighting for a better world. You can also wishlist the game on Steam. The link to the Steam page is in the description of this video, as well as a bunch of other links of things you can do. And yeah, so this is like this week's development update for GB Rober. Some stuff has happened, but let's just recap of what I intended to do the past week and what I ended up doing actually. Both of these lists are kind of very similar, to be honest, but we'll have to see. So, what I planned was to create an achievement implementation script for GB Rober so that I can start implementing achievements. I also wanted to submit GB Rober. GB Rober is something else. GB Rober to like festivals. I wanted to create a folder where I could put in or like create a collection of assets that I could send over to publishers for like the cases or like for when I wanted to pitch them GB Rober for like various reasons. And also I wanted to make a decision on whether or not I wanted to buy a ticket for the upcoming GDC, which is online, which means that I could actually attend it if I'm willing to ruin my sleep schedule a tiny bit. Anyway, this is what I planned. This is what I did. It's kind of like the same, but a bit shorter, like written. So I did add the achievement implementation script. I also added most of the achievements that I want to have in the game. Maybe I'll add a few more. The good thing is that I can easily now like add stuff to this without much problems, and that the basic implementation is there. It's also built in such a way that it should be fairly easy to basically remove the Steam implementation, implement whatever else like other kind of like achievement platform bullshit calls that you need to do for other platforms. I don't know, but I built it in such a way that basically all you have to do is like change one variable, so to speak, and like stuff should work that way. Anyway, I did that. I'm fairly proud of some of the achievements that I did, because I think I landed at a good balance of making achievements that are like let's go a step back. One thing that I wanted to do with the achievements, or like there are two things that I wanted to do with the achievements. First of all, I wanted to put in achievements and kind of emphasize what the game is about. I mean, so to speak, it's like mostly anyway what the game is about, and I also wanted to put stuff in like that is kind of like motivating players that are interested in this kind of like gameplay experience, that like to push themselves in games that they enjoy, to give them challenges that are like fairly interesting in some ways, and occasionally verge on like on like right up bullshit, but I think still funny bullshit to some extent. So what I did is I added like, for the I want to hammer home what the game is about, I added a bunch of achievements that deal with the intro sequence, that is very much about like you're working for someone else and like creating wealth, so to speak, for someone else, which then led to me like adding a whole new like combo system to the intro sequence, where like, so the intro sequence works like this, that like for 2 minutes all you do is like occasionally shoot something that falls out of a pipe, and the object that you shoot explodes and coins fall out, and it's completely random where these coins drop, and you can't move in this sequence, and the only coins that you collect basically are the coins that directly hit you. Like if it lands right in front of you or like just behind you, you don't get it, and like most of the coins like fall into a pit which is kind of like marked as this is what your boss earns off of your work, so to speak. And so one achievement I put in there is called minimum wage, which is like something that you get when you manage to earn 15 coins in one intro sequence, which is like around like 2 minutes, as I said, like 2 to 2.5 minutes. I think it, like the shooting part is only 1 to 1.5 minutes, because after that Roba starts striking and you can't like fire anymore for a moment. So like, and the funny thing about this minimum wage achievement is that it's completely random whether or not you get it. Sure, you can like, it's more likely that you get it when you hit more of these objects that are falling out, because you get like potentially more coins. But because the coin like spread and like distribution is completely random, it's actually kind of hard to get to that point. And it's again, it's for me like trying to do like some very, very, very basic social commentary in this game. And like, and there's also the part that basically there are like 3 achievements that are tied to like how much money you earn your boss. Basically how much money drops down the pit while you're working. And in order to make this achievement less, these achievements a bit less tedious, there's now a combo system where like basically the money that only drops into the pit increases exponentially the more of these objects you hit in a row. So there's like kind of this part, and like again, it's kind of like the idea of like when you work for someone else, like there is a point where like any kind of like more work you do or more like productivity you create isn't going to benefit yourself, but only the person who's siphoning most of the wealth you create off of your work. So that's kind of the idea behind all of that, and I was kind of proud of it. Like the other kind of achievements are like things that kind of pressure you or like entice you to play the game in sometimes unoptimal ways, and sometimes like trying to push you towards like certain playstyles, like playing the game very fast or playing the game like at very low health. One achievement like requires you to never walk to your right. I think I actually like mentioned it last week. Right now it's only an achievement where you only have to do it for 1 level and not the whole game. I'm still debating on whether or not I also want to put an achievement in where you have to play the whole game that way. You can do it, like I did it like for 1 level. It's kind of rough but also interesting to play. The way you do it, how like obviously it's kind of like the achievement states you never have to walk like to the right, but you can jump to the right and you can dash to the right. So there are more like movement options that you can use, but like basically you have like about 30 frames of like of buffer that you can walk to your right, but like since there's like no obvious counter going, it's very hard to gauge how far you're actually able to move. I basically put this in just to make sure that the achievement is doable in a way where like you don't accidentally, when you like hit the ground, have like the like stick pointed to the right for like a tiny bit too long. So that there's a little bit of like buffer there, so that it's actually doable. And yeah, so there's like that kind of stuff I put in there. It's like kind of funny or like interesting for me to do this stuff. And it all works. I submitted the build to Steam, and GB Robo has now also been approved to be released on Steam, because like the achievements was one of the reasons why it hasn't been approved so far, but it's now been approved, so I could release it whenever at this point, which is a good thing, but which also brings me to the next point, because when it'll be released and in what state it'll be released very much depends on the next few weeks, because as I was looking publishers and creating all the stuff and assets that I wanted to send to them, I started thinking, and this is like also something that I talked a little bit about last week, this notion of like I had to like restrain myself to make the game larger. And the thought that I had is that the compromise that I landed on in the end, like I'm not going to make the game larger just for myself. The only like case where I would decide to push the release back and add more levels and more stuff to GB Robo before I release the game would be when I find a publisher who's willing to pay for it. So I created basically a like second pitch deck, which is almost the same as the first pitch deck, just with like few differences in the part of like this is what I need. And I picked out a few publishers from which I'm fairly certain that they actually do have the money to pay for that kind of stuff. I made a rough estimation about the amount of money that I would need for the time and all that. Like I actually made a calculation, okay, this is how long I would need to make one level, like completely with all assets and everything else in there, and like made an estimation of like, okay, one level would take me this long. I would like to add 6 more levels, so take this amount and like times 6 plus like a few weeks of buffer in case something goes wrong. And then I assumed a hourly wage for the kind of work that I'm doing, and also what probably someone who would do this kind of work would get paid. And this is like where I ended up with a certain amount of money that I'm asking for, and I send out like a bunch of like pitches and things to these publishers last Friday. And this isn't really for me to like, I don't expect something to happen out of this. It would be cool, and under these circumstances I would be very, very glad to do more work on this game, because it's kind of fun to like come up with new ideas and new things, and I have some ideas that I would like to do, but again, it's not something that I'm keen on doing on my own time and with the resources that I have. But if someone is willing to pay for it, sure. And the idea for me to do that was like twofold. First of all, I think it's a good exercise for me to just go out and claim that my work deserves that kind of treatment and deserves that kind of support, and kind of also like believe in myself enough that this game would do well enough in such a setting that it would warrant that kind of investment. Because you have to like, to some degree, you have to believe in that stuff yourself. You can't expect other people to believe in your work to such a degree that they are willing to spend money and invest money and time into it when you not yourself are very hesitant and scared of like going down that route. So this is partially like a practicing. Oh, by the way, if you're hearing drilling noises, I'm very sorry. This is like, there's like work going on over there. So that's like, first of all, that it's also part of me like practicing this kind of stuff, and also like practicing claim what kind of like payment I'm worth and what kind of money I'm worth, and claiming this to myself. This is a lot about me finding ways and finding and creating situations where I have to like take a stand in these things, because this is very hard for me, and this was very hard for me in the past, and like trying to get to a point where I'm comfortable like demanding these things and like talking about this stuff and putting this stuff out, and like trying to create a budget and a timeline and making confident estimations in what I'm doing, and being confident in my work and my ability to do this kind of work. Again, it's something that is hard for me to do, because it like goes against, like, if you have low self-esteem, it's very hard to like go out and say, yeah, sure, I can do that, because like when you start making these kind of claims and these kinds of announcements, this also creates the expectation that you can actually deliver that, and expectation means pressure, and if you're like scared of like being under pressure and having outside expectations on you, this can be rough. But in order to like actually get somewhere with this stuff and not like having to rely on welfare for the rest of my life, which I would very much like to do, not because I think welfare is bad, but because the welfare state that pays my welfare is terrible, is something I would like, this is something that I have to do regardless at some point. And I thought, why not start now? See what happens, and if nothing happens, well, nothing happens, and I'm still doing the things that I planned on doing. And this is like where I landed on. I gave myself like a deadline until which I'm going to hold back on the release of the game. it's not that long. It's okay for me that it's not that long, but it's still like a few weeks off until I have to make a decision. And I'm only going to announce like GB Rover's release date if I'm like, should I not hear anything positive or anything at all from the publishers that I contacted last week. If I'm hearing something and I'm in like negotiations at that point, I'll hold off on announcing the release date, because it might as well be that it takes much longer if the negotiations go right. But if like nothing happens and like everything stays the same it is, I'll probably announce in like 4 to 6 weeks, depending on how the next weeks go, and again on how like whatever I send out will go. I'm not expecting much, because I know what I'm making, and I'm fairly certain that it's not very interesting to publishers. Like at least like publishers in terms of like, okay, we are going to invest money in this. I'm pretty sure that I'll have much more luck with the initial, like with the idea that I had of like, okay, I just need a publisher to help me port this game to consoles. I'm pretty sure that I'll find someone there that does this. And I'm like on that end, I'm much less strict on like who I'm willing to like contact and all that. But that's the next part. Anyway, that's like where I am right now. I'm kind of excited about all of this, because if things go well, this could mean that I have like some like that my living situations would actually tremendously improve to some degree, and that like I would actually have like a much more stable situation in terms of like doing the work that I want to do. But again, like getting a rejection in that regard by no means means that what I'm doing here is wrong and bad and terrible and I feel ashamed of myself. It's just like you can't control what publishers expect, what publishers are looking for, and maybe I've contacted the wrong publishers with the type of game that I'm making. Who knows? Really, this is stuff I have to find out only through experience. I can ask people for like their input and their information, but in the end, this is stuff I have to figure out for myself. And again, the best way to figure stuff out for yourself is to just like try and do these steps and like be as upfront and confident in yourself as you can be, and just see what happens. And if nothing happens, well, then nothing happens. But one thing I also realized while creating the pitch decks and creating all the assets and the stuff and like sending it over to publishers is that to some degree GB Rover is a fairly thankful project for me in that regard, because and I also realized that when I submitted GB Rover to festivals is I don't have to think for a long time to come up with stuff to make the game sound interesting, because like a lot of the stuff that happens in the game and the way it's structured and what it's about and what it's saying and the way in which it is saying things is very close to the way that I generally am as a person. So it's not that hard for me to like find ways to like express myself and also talk about the game in a way where I feel like this sounds authentic and not like someone who fakes it or like tries to make something sound more interesting and larger than it actually is. So I'm very, just in that regard, I'm very, very like satisfied and happy with how everything goes. And I had like several weeks now where like just like was very, very proud of the work that I did. And this again is like part of the sequence which in the end led me to the decision to say, okay, let's see if someone maybe wants to give me money for this, and gives me money for not, okay, the game's here, have some money and the game's done, but like, and let me like add more stuff to this game. Just see what happens, and if nothing happens, oh well, it's not a big deal. If nothing happens, then I'm still in the same situation as I'm now, and I can live with that. It's not great, but I can live with that. And that's all I can ask for right now, and that's fine. Overall, generally, just as an aside, and this video is getting incredibly long because I'm rambling, but anyway, the Steam Summer Sale was over, and is over now, and Splinter Zone did fairly well. Like overall, like in general, this year has been like pretty good in terms of like selling Splinter Zone. I have to look at the numbers again, but like I haven't had that good of a year in terms of like how many units I sold and how much money the game made. Like this is on, like, if things go the way they have been going so far, like this might be the second best year like for Splinter Zone in terms of like commercial performance, which is interesting considering the game is 4 years old at this point. But it's again something that gives me kind of confidence in like the work that I'm doing and what I have been doing over the past few months, which again gives me confidence that even if I don't find a publisher or whatever, that maybe maybe GB Rover will do well for itself, and that would be kind of cool. And I'm in general like fairly confident in what I've built here so far, and regardless of how everything else goes. Anyways, this is what I did last week. A lot of thinking, a lot of like doing stuff and preparing stuff, and also spending some time, especially during longer walks, just feeling good about what I did, which is sometimes nice, especially if you have like, again, coming out of like a few years with depression and all that stuff, just having these phases where like you just feel good about what you've been doing over the past few months is kind of nice. Anyway, this is what I have planned for this week to kind of like wrap things up. I want to rework a boss fight in GB Rover. I'm not going to say which boss fight because it's kind of spoilery. It's basically the one boss fight where it's very important for me that it communicates like certain like emotional like impact, and so far the fight isn't where I want it to be, and I have some ideas of what I want to make out of this. I have to see how the week goes and if I'm actually able to pull it off. The fight right now, it's fine, but it doesn't have the impact that I want it to have, and I'm pretty sure that I can improve it. Like fairly certain I can definitely make it less unfair. That's like there are two goals. Make it a bit less unfair, make it, or 3 goals, make it a bit more interesting in terms of like what's happening, and also like make it more impactful overall. I want to send GB Rover to more publishers. This week is mostly the publishers where I'm like more like where I'm thinking more about, okay, these are the ones that probably can't or won't pay for like another set of levels or whatever, but that would probably very much be interested in porting GB Rover. So that's like the ones, and like overall these are the more like important publishers and pitches to do right, because that's what I like from the things that I would really like to do with GB Rover, like porting to consoles is definitely there. It's like overall more important to me to some degree than like getting the larger like game and whatever things, which also would be great, especially if it also means that like there would be a console ports and whatever. But this is like the main goal. Like if I can manage to do this, then I'm incredibly happy. So that's still like, it's not an afterthought or whatever by any means. Just in case someone is watching that like might be checking this out, it's by no means an afterthought. It's like still again trying to think, okay, where like is it like what kind of energy and what kind of approach is applicable to which situation, and it's a slightly different situation, but it's nonetheless an important situation, so I have to try and do this right. So that's like for this week. I still need to like, I kind of made a decision to like whether or not I want to attend GDC or get a ticket for GDC. The problem is that you can only buy a ticket with a credit card, and I don't have a credit card, so I need to like ask some of the people that I know that do have credit cards that like they might be okay with them like paying $250 in my name, so that I can then get a ticket and give them the money back. And it's so annoying. Please give more payment providers than just credit cards. I don't understand this. Anyway, that's like still kind of maybe on the list. It's a bit further down because I found this incredibly annoying, and it's something where like, okay, now I have to talk to people again. Anyway, the other thing that I want to do is start building a press list, like which one to contact on which site. Maybe start writing out a template email that I could send out from like for the case like should I maybe announce the release date at some point, or in case I do it, and all that. That's very much like building a press list is very much like on the do this before you announce that the game is going to come out, and like have everything prepared for like that kind of stuff. Building a press list and building a list of like streamers and whatever to contact. That's like those are the two things that I definitely need to do before I move towards like, okay, now the game is going to come out. Again, everything depending on how the next weeks go in terms of like publishers, but right now I'm operating under the assumption that nothing will happen, because like if I'm operating under a different assumption, I'll end up not doing anything, and then like I'll be way behind my schedule, and like everything would be bad. So I'm just going to keep working in the way that I have been working previously. I'm going to follow the plan that I set out, and if things change, then I change my plans, and if nothing changes, which I'm fairly sure it will, I'll just move on the way I did so far. And again, building a press list and building a list of streamers that I want to contact is definitely on there, and I think it's very like I want to do it myself because I don't trust any of the lists that are out there. I used to do YouTube videos about indie games in German from like 2013 to 2015 roughly, and like late 2015 I stopped doing it, and I occasionally still get emails from developers about their upcoming games, and occasionally, not that often anymore, I still get keys sent my way, and I really tried my best to get myself removed from. Like I was on a bunch of press lists. Like I put myself on there back then to get press like emails from developers and to get keys and all that. But I removed myself once I like decided to not like to stop doing these videos. And I'm still on some lists somewhere from people that still believe that maybe I'm doing this kind of stuff. So, like, this means I don't trust any of the lists that you might find somewhere, because who knows how well maintained they are. I'm pretty sure a lot of them aren't really well maintained, so I want to build my own list. Also kind of like geared towards the kind of people I would like to contact, and not as much like a very like scattershot approach about like, okay, I'm going to send this thing to like whoever is currently the very big YouTube streamer or whatever. I'm so out of touch with this kind of stuff anyway, so I have no idea who's relevant at this point, because this won't work. So I'm much more interested in like finding people where I know, okay, they would be interested in the game, and they have some kind of like them showing a game actually creates like some ripple effects, or the potential for ripple effects that other people might pick up the game and show it off and all that kind of stuff. So I would like, especially in terms of streamers, for press it's kind of similar. There it's more about, okay, which like, because again I'm fairly certain that larger game sites won't cover GB Rover unless something very, very strange happens. And again, like unless I get a publisher who like has much more clout than I am, but I'm not expecting this, so I'm just like, doesn't mean that I won't contact them, because you never know, maybe there's a slow news day or whatever, or someone is like very, very, very bored and like looks through their email inbox for a long time. So I'm still doing it, but I'm mostly trying to find, again, sites and games press where I'm fairly certain that they might, or it's more likely that they might cover GB Rover, and again that it like creates some kind of like reinforcement and whatever. So that's kind of the idea, and we'll have to see how it goes. That's like, it's not something that I'll finish this week. It's more like something where I feel like, okay, I should start with it now so that everything is ready come like mid-August or whatever. Once I like try to probably aim and want to move into like more like proactive press outreach and all that stuff. Anyway, this has been incredibly long. Like I really like my intention is to get these things shorter, and this one is now over 30 minutes. My apologies for that. It is always the same. Anyway, this is where you can find me on the internet. Please wishlist GB Robot. That would mean a lot to me. The game is good. It's really, really good. So these are like parts where you can find me. Again, wishlist GB Robot. Follow the game on Steam if you haven't already. This way you also get announcements over there, like when something happens. You can follow @Mokograd on Twitter, where I'll post regularly updates and gifts from the game. So if you're into that, you can also do that. There's an email newsletter that you can subscribe to that is more about like infrequent larger updates and announcements, so you don't like I'm not going to spam your inbox full. It's more like, okay, let's this is like a big enough thing that I have to announce, so let's do it now. So that's that. And yeah, obviously subscribe to this channel if you want more like this. You can do that. Also Twitch. Yeah, sometimes I Twitch. No, I also stream like once per week on Twitch, like streaming some small work on GB Rover. You can find the archives on this channel as well. The archive from this week has like the first 5 to 6 minutes cut off, because apparently I'm still not sure which part of the music that was running in the background got copyright marked. I'm pretty sure it was the title theme for Chaos Engine which was playing there, because I would be very, very surprised if somehow the title theme for the like early 90s Amiga like hit game cover was for some reason now been copyrighted. I don't know. But it happened. It got muted for like 5 minutes. Thankfully, it was only 5 minutes, so it's not a big deal, because I was rambling a lot in these 5 minutes, kind of like now. Anyway, I hope you have a nice week, and all that kind of stuff. Stay safe, everyone. Have a nice week. Have a nice week again, and see you next time. Goodbye.